Consider using this for the for Devil's Mountain. I'm watching I can only describe it as a miracle. It's amazing. I'm watching the only existing video of Seth speaking through Jane Roberts. I stumbled upon it on Netflix. My apologies, not Netflix. This is YouTube. The really interesting thing about this for me, I've been obsessed with the work of Seth for years. I do not know why, but I've always been obsessed with Atlantis. And the work of Seth and Edgar Casey helped me deal with my obsession with Atlantis. I'm not saying this properly. The point I wanted to record is this. And again, this is something, I'm saying this primarily for Devil's Mountain. I want to include it, but it's also unfortunately true that ever since I was a child, there has been something that has been trying to get me to leave my body. And I know that sounds weird. I gotta close this window, it's so fucking loud. I know it sounds weird, but when I was, it was the summertime, my teenage years, I can't remember the exact year, I'll have to look it up in my journal, but it was the summer that my cousins came down. My cousins Kelly and Rob came down. They were staying with me and my brother. I'll change this so I look better. Yeah, so it was my cousins Kelly and Rob came down to stay for not this summer, a couple weeks. And we were playing with the Ouija board. And I was reminded of this because Jane Roberts was talking about contacting entities through a Ouija board. And it was after this weekend, after the experience I'm going to talk about right now, that I decided to never touch a Ouija board again. And I don't think I've ever recorded it. I've told very few people about this, but this is true. And I think it should be included in a movie. Cut. So if I actually do include any of that in the movie, side note here, don't include this part because this would be the filming part of it. I'm thinking that when I'm talking with Sebastian, or Michael's character, I can then reveal, I kind of relate because I had this really weird experience when I was a kid where it felt like something was trying to get to me to leave my body, and then maybe tie that into being kidnapped into the fairy realm. And that's being kidnapped into the dark realm. That's why. It's because something has been trying to get me for a long time, and I'm vulnerable to it. And then because I've been kidnapped, that gives Sebastian the incentive to get into the woods, because otherwise, why would he ever do that? So that's his incentive. It turns him into a hero. He gets to go and save the guy. I get to be the guy that gets saved, which is kind of cool. And anyway, back to the other thing. Back to the story. So we were playing with the Ouija board, and I was already hesitant because I'd read, it was in the 80s, so I had read the work of, God, they've made movies about them, what are they? The demonologists, Ed and Warren. Ed Warren, what's her fuck's names? I can't remember their names. Anyway, I read the book, The Demonologist, about the Warrens, and I knew, because of that you should play with the Ouija board. But I was anyway. I'm talking with my hands, but I'm not even showing them. It's weird. But I knew it was a bad idea to play with the Ouija board. But I did anyway. And it told me some things, like I found out that the wife of a friend's, the wife of my dad's best friend had cancer. Ouija board told me that. And she did. So that was like, I don't think we should be playing with this. But we were kids, and I was the oldest there. I might have been 10. Might have been 10. I can't remember the year, but it was after the release of The Demonologist, at least, so we know that for sure. But one of the things that came through was there was this entity, and it was telling us to leave our bodies. It was telling us it wanted us to astrally project to the moon. And I was saying, like, if we leave our bodies, that means that something can come in. Don't do that. But it kept kind of getting us to do that. And it gave us the initials. When we asked who it was, the initials it said were HPV. Now, I don't know why, but HPV, I always assumed was H.P. Blavatsky. I don't know why, now that I think of it. Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense, but in my head, that's what it was. HPV. I don't know. That's what it always came back to. H.P. Blavatsky. And it told me things. And here's the really annoying thing. Because I can't remember anymore what things I learned from Edgar Casey, what things I learned from Seth, and what things I just learned. Because I think maybe something has been trying to channel through me for a long time. Which is, again, something a crazy person would say. Now, the interesting thing about this recording of Jane Roberts talking about Seth is she doesn't really seem to think she doesn't want to assume that it is a spirit. She doesn't think that it's a spirit guide. She doesn't want to attach it to any dogma. And I'm like, thank you. Like, she's like, it's an experience. You can cloak it in a dogma, but it's just, she has no idea what it is. She's able to connect with another personality. And of course, then I'm thinking, is it just like an alternate personality? Is that what it is? Is it just dissociation? And it seems pretty much what it is. Like, you just dissociate and you become another person. Now, the part that I can't science away is when you're in that different state of consciousness, how do you have access to information that you shouldn't have? Now, my assumption is that it's just you have access to memories. Like, you've read a book, and again, maybe that makes science sense to me. You've read a book and you can't remember it, you can't recall it, but when you're in your alternate state, suddenly you can. Suddenly you can remember things that you couldn't before. Or when you're in an altered state, you're more observant and you're more in tune with your senses, because we have more than 5 senses. And maybe your sense of smell is heightened when that makes science sense to me. I can't science sense knowing the future. I can't. I can't science sense that when I saw the picture of Seth, he looked familiar. Like someone I've seen. Because in the video, Jane Roberts' partner, Robert Butts, unfortunate name, is a painter, and he has painted what he thinks or what he believes Seth looks like. And as soon as I saw him, I'm like, yeah, I think I've seen that guy. I don't want that to be true. Jane Roberts died in 1984, which would have been me seeing the figure of Seth would have been after that. But it's also possible, isn't it, that I've just read a book before about Jane Roberts and seen that picture before. So of course I've seen that picture, and of course he looks familiar. And that makes science sense. And I'm going to keep believing in science as long as possible because it makes me feel a lot safer.